tonight's topic is going to be understanding and navigating early stage marriage cancer. Last week we had an in-depth training about separation, which usually, not always, but usually separation, and once a guy is in the divorce process, it indicates advanced marriage cancer. Today we're going to talk about early stage marriage cancer, which means for guys whose wives are officially working on the marriage. If your wife is still working on the marriage with you, okay, we're going to refer to that as early stage marriage cancer. Like if your wife is officially still giving the marriage a chance and wants to make it work, whatever that's supposed to mean. That is, again, usually without talking to you, right? I can't really know, but approximately based on the accumulated experience with hundreds and hundreds of guys, that is typically an indication of early stage marriage cancer. And there are obviously pros in a case of early marriage cancer, and there are cons. There's a downside. There's something that you need to understand about it. And we're also going to give you a formula to be able to gauge if you're on track or not. This is really important. Let's talk about the situation. And if this is you, let me know in the comments. Are you still, or are you at the stage in the marriage where your wife is still officially working on the marriage with you, wanting to make it work out, giving it a chance, giving it a shot? Let me know in the comments. And what that would mean usually is that she's either willing to go to counseling, or she's willing to talk to you about what she wants, or you're in the middle of trying to understand each other, communicate, compromise, negotiate. She may be giving you a list of things that she needs in order for her to be happy, in order for you to be able to reconcile or have a better emotional connection or intimacy or happiness. Maybe your guys are going on dates, but you're talking about the relationship. You're officially working on the marriage, right? That is the situation. That is early stage marriage cancer. Now, maybe you don't have marriage cancer at all, right? And this video is going to unlock that for you. Now, it's great. That's a great situation to be in if your wife is working on the marriage, if you're making legitimate progress. If you're really making genuine, sincere progress, and that behind the scenes, you and your wife's heart is healing, your hearts are melding, you're welding together, you're really bonding, you're really growing, and you're really in the next stage of your marriage in a positive way. The problem is that in a lot of cases, a lot of situations, it's an illusion. There isn't any real progress going on. Sometimes there is. And we're going to break down in this video some more specifics, how to gauge that, how to understand it, and to get a sense of where you're up to and what you should be focusing on. Does that make sense, guys? You with me? All right. So now to understand, what does it mean there's an illusion sometimes of progress? Because a lot of guys fall for this trap. A lot of guys fall into the trap of, hey, we're working on this together, so let me figure this out. We're working on it, and let me work on this with her and see how far this goes on my own. And that might be true for some marriages. The problem is, if you have marriage cancer, it's not true. That there is damage being done behind the scenes, or there is damage that has already been done behind the scenes, which if you don't address it, it's going to come up sooner or later. And of course, if you don't see it, you won't be able to address it. In order to help you guys understand what does it mean an illusion, let's explain what marriage cancer is. And we've had many videos talking about it. I'm going to try to simplify it. If you have to break down marriage cancer, I would say there is the thing which is the problem, and then there is the pain. There is the main, and there is the pain, right? The main thing is the main issue that's causing a disc that is the problem between you and your wife, and then there's the pain. Like every situation, somebody can have a, God forbid, cancer, right? The main issue is the tumor. The pain is the pain, the headache, the vomiting, the exhaustion, the inability to function, right? The inability to sleep, right? So there is, but the main issue is the tumor. At the end of the day, the tumor is the issue. The issue isn't the vomit. The issue is not the pain, although it's an important piece, but it's not the main issue. So similarly, in marriage cancer, very often, it's very easy for a guy to notice and get fixated on fixing the pain, the problem, without seeing what's deeper, what's behind the scenes, what's been feeding the problem behind the scenes. And we naturally have a tendency to focus on things which are painful, which are symptoms, basically, right? Without going to the fundamental, without going to the main issue, without going to the marriage cancer tumor, if you wish. We'll call it a tumor, right? Just trying to make a point. And similarly, in a marriage, you have different painful scenarios or symptoms which might attract your attention, such as an easy one to notice is separation, right? Obviously, separation is a symptom. It doesn't take a genius. You don't have to be a marriage expert to figure out that if you're separated, there's a deeper issue, right? The problem isn't separation, although separation is painful. The problem is what led up to your wife wanting separation. It's a little bit harder to notice sometimes if your wife, in many cases where the wife is having an emotional or physical affair, even though this is going to insult some people, but most times, I'm not justifying her behavior, and I'm not condoning it, I'm not saying that's the right way of behaving, but most times, 90% of the time, when I work with such a marriage, explore such a marriage, interview the wife and husband, or husband, what I found is that there was a lot of neglect that happened behind the scenes. The affair didn't come out of nowhere. Again, it doesn't mean to justify it. I'm just saying that's a symptom. All I'm trying to say over here, I don't want to get into a tangle over is it right or wrong. Okay, obviously it's not right, but it is a symptom, right? An affair isn't a symptom. It's an advanced symptom. It's a painful symptom. It's a traumatic symptom, but it is a symptom. It's not the main issue. Other areas that where guys start tripping up on, and this is very important to pay attention, is communication. A lot of guys feel like communication is the main issue. A lot of guys tell me, David, our main issue is communication. No, it's not. No, it's not. If it was, then if you work on it, it would get better. Some couples do have communication issues, by the way. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as a communication issue. But if you have a communication issue and you work on it, it gets better. If you have a communication issue, if you have a marriage cancer issue and you work on communication, your communication will not get better. That's the point I'm trying to make. And a lot of guys misunderstand it because every time they get some communication going with their wives, they feel that they're back on track. And this is part of the illusion. But they ignore the history of how many times were there miscommunication? How many times did I do what she said she wanted me to do and she still wasn't happy? How many times did I do what she said she wanted me to do and she still complained, or she still blamed me, or she still shut down? But then the guys will, the moment she communicates a little bit, the guy feels like we're communicating. So one way to look at it is see the pattern, see the history. Has there been a long history of you go through these downs and then you have enough connection that you sort of forget about the down? But to put it simply, communication is a symptom. And I'll prove it to you because when you fell in love, nobody ever taught you how to communicate. Right? Nobody. You knew how to communicate when you were in love. How come you know how to communicate? Because when a couple feels connected to each other, they know how to communicate. It's automatic. It really is. It's really automatic. When a couple feels disconnected to each other, it doesn't matter how much communication skills you learn, how many books you read, how many training classes you get. If your wife doesn't feel connected to you and trusting of your love, you will have communication issues, even if you know everything about communication. Because communication is a symptom. Communication is a natural result of an existing connection. Communication does not create connection. Okay? I could go on and on with a bunch of different symptoms. I'm trying to help you understand the difference help you understand what a symptom is in marriage. We'll talk about fundamentals soon. Okay? But this is where the illusion starts kicking in. That a guy will focus on the pain instead of the main issue. He'll focus on the intimacy which is missing, or the respect which is non-existing, or the communication which is dysfunctional, or the shutdowns, or the ignoring that happens, or the coldness. He'll focus on the fears, on the separation. These are all symptoms. And some of these need to be addressed in some way, but they're never the main focus. That is the concept of fundamentals and symptoms. I hope that's clear. All right? Make sense? Cool. Yep, exactly, Jacob. We do have to be honest about the fact that neglect does feed affairs. It really does. And 90% of the time. As hard as it is to hear, that's the reality. Now, here, let's go deeper. The same mistake guys make with external solutions. In other words, even when the marriage seems like it's getting better, again, they focus in the wrong area. Listen carefully. This is deep. Bear with me. It's going to make sense. All right? Ready? Just like when there is a problem in the relationship, and there is a disconnect in the relationship, and there is a emotional disconnect, a intimate disconnect, a lack of respect, just like those areas are primarily symptoms. Well, I shouldn't say emotional disconnect is a symptom. Intimate disconnect is a symptom. Communication, disrespect, those are symptoms. Let's leave emotional disconnect out of it because that ties into what marriage cancer is. But just like the pain, when a guy is in pain in the marriage, he will focus on the symptoms. Listen carefully. So too, when the marriage is getting officially better, he also still focuses on the external issues. He focuses on things that don't really matter. He focuses on the fact that, oh, my wife is talking to me. My wife is working on it with me. And he ignores entire history that suggests that this may just be external. Okay, I'm going to walk you through the process of being able to figure out, is the progress you're making with your wife legitimate or not? But this is a major important area. You got to understand this. Very often guys focus on the symptoms when they're in pain, but they also focus on the good symptoms when things are getting better, or they think things are getting better because they look externally. And the problem with looking at symptoms, even when they're good, like, hey, we're connecting intimately. Hey, we're communicating more. Hey, we're dating. Hey, we're working on the marriage together. The problem with focusing on that without going deeper is that sooner or later, the fundamental tumor, if you have marriage cancer, okay, I'm only saying, in a situation we have marriage cancer, it will resurface. It is going to sabotage the communication. It will undermine the intimacy. It will ruin the respect. And it will rob you of the sense of, hey, I was getting somewhere in my marriage, and suddenly you feel like, hey, I'm not getting somewhere. That came out of nowhere. I don't know how we experienced such a shutdown suddenly. Therefore, it's important to understand this, because I can promise you this: if you do have marriage cancer, the cycle of the pain, of the disconnect, of the distrust, of the wasted effort will repeat itself. It will repeat itself. It's either going to repeat itself in your marriage, and even if your marriage does not survive, I promise you it will repeat itself in the next marriage. I shouldn't say I promise you, because it's not always true, but statistically, you actually have a bigger chance of a second divorce if you have a first divorce. And you have an even bigger chance of a third divorce after a second divorce, even though a lot of guys think to themselves, hey, 1 second, I figured out where I went wrong in my first relationship, so now I know what not to do in my second relationship. That's a very common thing a lot of guys think and feel, and maybe legitimately believe it, but the reality is the statistics show otherwise, that there is actually an increasing chance. And the reason for that is because of a misunderstanding of what is marriage cancer, what feeds the emotional connection between a husband and wife, what breaks that emotional connection between a husband and wife, and therefore the cycle does repeat itself, whether it's in your current marriage or next marriage, right? Let's sum this up. The pros are obvious. There are obvious pros when your wife is working on the relationship with you. If you have an early stage marriage cancer, the pros are the fact that it feels good, the fact that you feel like you're getting somewhere, you feel like your effort is paying off, that your wife is opening up to you more, trusting you more, communicating with you more. The pros are obvious. It seems like you're making progress. You don't need me to explain that to you. But the cons, like I said before, is that it can be a delusion. If you don't truly understand what is going on behind the scenes in your wife's mind and heart, it is an illusion. let's break it down. When would it work if a couple is working on the marriage together? There are some times it works. Some couples do heal their marriage together. I am not saying that it never works. I'm saying that it works under certain scenarios. And if you have marriage cancer, you're not that scenario. And I'm going to help you understand what it looks like. It only works, in other words, involving your wife in the process, or listening to her feedback, or trusting that her involvement is somehow, the fact that you're working on the marriage together is going to make the marriage better, will only work, A, if she gives you helpful information. In other words, the feedback she gives you is something that actually makes sense. Consistently. In other words, that she says, hey, if you do this and this and this, things will be better, we will be better off, and you do it and it actually helps. How many of you guys experienced that you did what your wife wanted and it actually helped? Let me know in the comments. And how many of you guys did what your wife wanted, did her list, legitimately, you really tried to please her and it didn't help? She was still frustrated, she was still upset. She was still complaining about the same thing or something else, but she was still not happy with you. Okay? So in the first pieces, she has to be able to give you helpful information, which is consistently helpful. Number 2, she has to be able to invest her full heart. Okay? She has to be able to put in her full heart into the relationship. And this is a tricky thing. Some women will fake putting in their heart into the relationship, but deep in their hearts, they still believe that they already invested their heart into the marriage. So even while they go about, in early stage marriage cancer, they go about investing in the relationship, but in their hearts they feel they already did. So they're not fully invested. And therefore it's very easy for them to switch off, despite your efforts. Number 3, she has to be able to appreciate what you're doing. This is connected to putting in her full heart. She has to be able to see your effort and say, wow, I really appreciate what you're doing for us. And number 4, she has to be able to forget and forgive the past. If you have these 4 pieces in place, if she's giving you helpful information about what you can do to improve your marriage, and it's consistently helpful, B, she's putting in her full heart, C, she is appreciating your effort, and number 4, D, she is able to truly forget and forgive the past, then it would work. You could work on it with her. The problem is that if you have marriage cancer, these things are an illusion. She won't be able to give you helpful information consistently. Within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, at most, you will suddenly realize that whatever effort you've invested was wasted, did not reach her heart. And she will keep on bringing up the past because you haven't resolved the past somehow. She hasn't found a forgiveness. And I'm not judging her. I'm saying it's a reality of marriage cancer, that if you have a hurtful past built up, and you don't address it in a way that there's true forgiveness, she will bring it up. She will bring it up. And in some situations, I got to say, some women are confused about the way they feel. So they could be interacting with you in the marriage, hoping that you're going to figure out what to do or what to say. So they could be making believe they're investing their hearts in the relationship, but in their hearts, they're just like hoping to see, okay, what is he going to come up with? How is he going to make me feel a certain way? Expecting you to really figure it out. This is particularly true if she believes in her heart that she already put in years into the marriage before you realize the importance of you doing the same. All right? In a lot of cases of marriage cancer, the woman believes, hey, I already put my heart into this marriage. So even if she goes through the motions of doing it, and it looks like early stage marriage cancer, if she has that belief in her head, is this making sense? Do you guys get this? Do you get this? If she believes in her head she already invested so much time, and now she's just doing it because you pushed her into it, or she feels pressured, or she feels guilty or uncomfortable, and she feels that she has to invest her heart into the marriage, the belief she has that she already did it is going to hold her back from putting in her full heart. She will not be able to put in her full heart, and it's only a matter of time before she's going to complain or criticize, because she can't put her full heart into it. That's an indication of marriage cancer. Okay, so you may do her list, and then you'll find out that she's not happy with all the things you did, or you did it wrong, or she's complaining about a new list of stuff that she wants you to do. And then you can either give up or get resentful or keep doing it while you're resentful. And these are the types of traps that happen with early stage marriage cancer. Okay? And here's another thing. Every time your wife's heart closes, every time she officially gives up, when I say her heart closes, I'm talking about the things you can see, because until now in the past couple of minutes I was describing what could be going on behind the scenes if you have marriage cancer. But in the case where when I say noticing her heart close, it's very obvious. You can see her heart close, that she's walled up and it's very clear to you that your efforts are not working. Again, it doesn't take an expert to figure it out. You can know it. Every time that happens, it gets harder to open her up. Incrementally. Okay? Now, here's an interesting thing. What's that interesting thing? For guys who are separated, for them, it's in a certain way, it's easier, not in a certain way, in a big way, it's easier for them to understand marriage cancer. Look, if you look at the other videos we made over here, where we talk about fundamentals and symptoms of marriage cancer, subconscious communication, and marriage trap, and all those videos, you'll notice, if you're separated, you'll have an easier time, actually, ironically, it's a tragic humor, but ironically, you will actually understand these things a lot better. It's the guys who have the early stage marriage cancer that have a harder time understanding what marriage cancer is. Because they feel they're making progress. They feel they're talking to their wives. They feel like, hey, we're getting somewhere. We're working on it. The problem is every time her heart closes, and you can see she's giving up where she doesn't want to invest into the marriage, it gets harder to reopen her. Okay? And again, for guys who are separated, it's easier for them to understand it. So how do you know if you're on track or not? So I already gave you a couple of things in the past 10 minutes. But to be specific, if you have it very clear in your head and you know exactly what the fundamentals and the symptoms in your relationship, that is piece number one. Like, you have to be able to truly separate the main issue from the pain issue. Main and pain. To know, yes, these things are painful. Whatever the symptoms are, communication, intimacy, respect, separation, fears. There are more symptoms. There's kids, there's finances, there's in-laws, there's all sorts of symptoms. But from the main issue. Now, what is the main issue? Okay, there are all different types of main issues. Okay, I'll give you an example. And this is another area. This is a very critical area. This is a main issue that applies to everybody. Some people have other main issues, but this is one that applies to just about every marriage that I've worked with. You have to be able to detect, what are you saying or doing which is blocking her from feeling your unconditional love? That is the main issue. If you truly have 100% unconditional love for your wife, but she doesn't feel it and trust it, that is a main issue. That is feeding your marriage cancer. That may have even caused your marriage cancer, by the way. If there are things you're doing and investing in the marriage, and you're putting your heart into it, and that's not reaching her heart, that is an area to break down. In other words, if you can pick up on what those things are, then you're on track. Then you're definitely on track. On track to healing your marriage and on track to healing yourself, really. Right? If you can understand everything the fundamental and the symptom, if you can understand what is it that you're saying or doing which is blocking you from feeling unconditional love. Number three, if you can pick up on the 3% of your interaction and communication with her, which is sabotaging the rest of your efforts, that is a main issue. Then you're definitely on track. I'll give you an example, right? You could do a lot of good things for your marriage, but there are certain things that if you say or do them will make her feel like you're manipulating her. 3%, typically. You can do a lot of good stuff, but it's little things that make the wife feel that you're manipulating her. If you can pick up on that, then you're definitely on track. If you can pick up, for example, what are the things you're saying or doing which makes you look desperate, and if you look desperate, that will block her from feeling unconditional love. You may feel, hey, I'm really loving her, I care about her, but when it registers on her emotional radar, it's not going to feel like love, because it's going to feel like desperate, it's going to feel needy. If you can pick up on what those things are, then you're definitely on track. Final piece. If you can pick up, so again, if you can separate fundamentals from symptoms, if you can pick up what are you saying or doing which is blocking you from feeling unconditional love, if you have the clarity to know what is the 3% of your personality, of the things you say or do which make her feel like which sabotage the rest of your effort. And final piece, if you understand and really see subconscious communication and we don't have the time to get into it deep today, but if you go through a couple of videos, you'll probably find us talking about it. Subconscious communication is where she can see the way women process decisions and opinions is they first see a picture of you. Based on that, they have an opinion. Based on that, they have a feeling, and based on that, they'll use an excuse. So you can't. That's why you can't argue logically with your wife, because her logic is the very end of the sequence. In your mind, it's the beginning. For men, it's the beginning. For women, about the relationship, they can be very smart and successful in business and whatever it is in their life and career. They can be very bright. This has nothing to do with the intelligence of women. They're very bright. But when it comes to decisions and opinions about their relationship, logic is the last thing. They first lock in a picture of you in their head. True or not true, it could be something based on the present, it could be something based on the past. A picture gets stuck in their head, and then they get an opinion based on it, then they make a feeling based on it, and then at the end is their excuse, which is why their excuses can be inconsistent, which is why there could be a double standard, which is why they may say things that don't make sense to you. Okay, because they're stuck in certain feelings, and those feelings are coming from opinions, which are coming from an image. That's a entire topic unto itself, and we do have videos in this Facebook group that talk about it, probably in the guide section, about subconscious communication. But that is a key piece. Okay, but even if you have even if you did not understand what I just said about subconscious communication, and you have the other three pieces, you're definitely on track. You're definitely on track if you have those pieces in place. Okay, and that's why it's very important for guys to step up for the marriage and not wait for their wives to, and not depend, I should say, not depend on their wives to work in it with them, in a case where you know that you can't understand everything in a fundamental symptom, you can't see that 3%, you can't see what's blocking her from feeling unconditional love. That is an indication that you have marriage cancer. If I had to sum up today's training, early stage marriage cancer in a certain way is a blessing, because your wife's heart in a certain way is a bit more open, or at least it looks like that externally, but at least she has more chances of seeing your changes if you make them. At the same time, it can also be, I don't know how to say it, a curse or an illusion, because she may just be faking it. And if you don't understand what's really going on in her head, what she really believes, what her real frustrations are, what are the things that led up to the place where she is in her head in your marriage, then it's actually going to bite you sooner or later. So it really comes down to self-awareness, honesty, and the desire to get out of the pattern of going back and forth, of going from a place of, oh, we're good now, oh, now we're not good, oh, we're good now the marriage is not good. And when you make a firm decision to bust out of that pattern, then over time you will get the clarity. And in our group you'll get a tremendous amount of clarity from the videos we have over here to know what's the next right thing for you. And if the next right thing for you is to explore what marriage cancer is in your marriage and how to fix it, you can come and step up, and somebody on my team or myself will reach out to you and see if we can help you. That's basically it, guys. So with that, I'm going to duck out of here, go join the family, and wish you all a great evening. I will check your comments and questions sometime in the near future. Take care, guys.